Today on Talking Democracy, I welcome Tracey Mann, Republican candidate for Congress, to the show. Mr. Mann is one of 8 people vying to replace Jerry Moran in the U.S. House of Representatives. Today we'll talk to another citizen who has decided to take the greatest political step of all, running for Congress. Today we'll talk to Tracey Mann about his run for Congress on Talking Democracy. Welcome to Talking Democracy, and welcome to you, Tracey Mann. Thank you for joining me here on the show tonight.
Thank you for having me, Chad.
You're running for Congress, as I mentioned in the intro. No mean feat. But before we start talking about the campaign and so on, for people who don't know you, tell me a little bit about who Tracey Mann is.
Yeah, and when I heard your lead-in, it made me a little intimidated. It sounds like a big job. It is a big job. It's very important. I grew up in Quinter. That's home for me. My family's farmed and fed cattle in Quinter for more than 100 years. It's kind of a funny story, but my great-great-grandfather ordered the house that we live in from Sears and Roebuck. And it came on the train as a kid, and they put it together, and that's where we've lived ever since. So I grew up south of Quinter. We farm and raise corn and wheat and also have a preconditioning feed yard. So did that growing up, worked with my grandpa and my dad and my brother. Left Quinter when I went to K-State and was fortunate to be student body president at K-State. Studied agricultural economics, but my life really changed, and the reason I'm in this race is because in the summer of 1997, I was Jerry Moran's first intern in Washington. So Jerry got sworn in January of that year. I went to work for him that summer, and I never met a member of Congress before, and Jerry really instilled in me a love and a care for this state, the state of Kansas, that's never left me. And so I left Washington, came back to K-State, was student body president there, and then I moved back to Washington and spent a couple of years doing faith-based leadership programs and worked with different members of Congress from both sides of the aisle. Doing that project, came time to get engaged to my wife, Audrey. We decided to move back to Kansas. Audrey was going to Tabor College, but she grew up in Oklahoma. But wanted to move back to Kansas. There wasn't room on our family farm for my brother Shane and I, which is kind of a common story, so I had to figure out what am I going to do for work. So I started in the commercial real estate business, is what I do to this day. I represent small businesses all the way to Fortune 50 companies with their real estate-related needs. My background's really in small business and in agriculture, not in politics, which I think is a good thing these days.
And so it was the Moran internship that really kind of inspired that love of politics, or had you not thought much about politics before working for the congressman?
I thought a little bit about it. You know, I met so many people in Washington that had a huge ego, and they would walk in the halls of the Capitol or the office buildings and expect the people to get out of their way. With Jerry, it wasn't like that. And he really showed me, or I found someone that I felt like was doing it the right way because he put people first and politics second instead of politics first and people second. So unusual, and it's what really inspired me to try to fill his big shoes. And
they are pretty big shoes to fill. You were one of the candidates, of course, who was at our First District Congressional Candidates Forum a while back here at FHSU. And the one name that kept coming up among everyone was Jerry Moran. He's leaving a big imprint, and it seems that every candidate wants to make themselves to be the person to carry on the Jerry Moran tradition in the First District. Is that fair to say?
That's exactly right, and it's a tradition that goes back to Senator Roberts, who did a great job representing us, and then Jerry. I think people appreciate that Jerry knows everybody's name in the district. He gets out, he travels. We were talking earlier, it's not Congressman Moran, it's Jerry. And that's the expectation that people of the Big First have, and that's what they should have of their congressman. So.
And Jerry's kind of sacrificed his life to this job. 69 counties make up the district, the entire western portion of the state, stretching all the way to Marysville and Emporia and so on. There's so many people, such a big place, that this does become much more than just a job. It's multiple full-time jobs in one.
That's right. It's almost like a lifestyle. And we're out campaigning all the time. We did 22 counties in a big rollout tour we did about a month ago. We did 35 counties last month, all in all. And we're on the road all the time. I chuckle because it seems like every time I look at my odometer, chap, I need to get another oil change because we're on the road all the time, but that's just part of it. But what could be more fun than traveling and going to the larger cities in the district, but also the small towns in Kansas and meeting with the people that are there? It's an absolute blast, and we're having a great time.
Wonderful. Let's talk a little bit more about that. We need to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Tracey Mann on Talking Democracy.
I'm a Republican, and I haven't had a chance to look at them this year. I'm planning on kind of starting to follow them and see how they turn out for the rest of the year.
One of the Republicans who wants to be part of that comeback is Tracey Mann. Thanks for joining me here tonight on Talking Democracy. We're pretty much, I won't say guarantee, but it's a strong likelihood Republicans are going to keep this district, the 1st district. The fight is in the primary. You have 6 other candidates that are in this field, and you've got some experienced politicians, some expert fundraisers, people who have been in the mix before. This is your first run for any political office, is that right?
That's exactly right, except for being student body president at K-State.
Which is, of course, a very political position.
It is very political, but very different. I think that having a business and an agriculture background, not a political background, is a good thing. I think part of our problem is we just keep promoting politicians, either people that have served as a member of Congress, as staff person for a long time, or a current state senator. Nothing wrong with either of those career choices, but we just need new ideas and fresh faces if we're ever going to turn our country around.
So what are these new ideas? What do you bring to the table?
A lot of things. We just released last month what I call the Mann Plan, which is my plan to get our country and this Congress back on track. And the Mann Plan, it's not political rhetoric. It's specific things that I think we need to do, and I will work to do once elected, to, like I said, get our country and this Congress back on track. You can learn about it on our website, mannforcongress.com. But the Mann Plan talks about a lot of things. Some specific things are health care. What do we need to do with the health care legislation that's been passed? What makes the most sense for Kansas? Talks about agriculture, which agriculture continues to be the backbone of our economy. How do we stand up and advocate for agriculture? Talks about our tax policies. Talks about some social issues as well. All of those things are covered in the Mann Plan.
Those are a number of those things: tax policy, the debt, health care. In recent polls, those are 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2, and 4 in what the average voter considers to be the most important issues facing us right now. So let's talk about the health care, because that's been on the forefront of people's minds, and folks like the student whose interview brought us back to this. He's talking about being a conservative Republican, being concerned about the direction that the country is headed. Seems to be pretty similar to what you're.
I hear that all the time. We are traveling constantly, and I'm yet to meet a Kansan that's not concerned and just feels like the country is not going the direction that they would desire or hope that it would. Healthcare is a great example of that. I think Kansans, and I would agree, feel like the healthcare legislation got rammed through and negotiated in back rooms in a way that was not public, was not a public process. Very concerning. As I look at healthcare, and we can talk about healthcare for a long time, but there's 2 issues with healthcare. There's coverage and there's cost. And the bill that's been passed really addresses coverage. Some ways I think are inappropriate. I don't think we should require every Kansan to have health insurance whether they want to or not. But that aside, it doesn't really address cost. And the way more people can afford coverage is if costs go down. So I look and think, how do we decrease costs in health care? A lot of things. Number one, we've got to get serious about medical malpractice or tort reform. A lot of hospital administrators I talk to would say that 30% of the costs in health care are defensive medicines, which means that 1 in every $3 are spent on preventing lawsuits, not on preventing diseases or making people better. That's
They're doing excessive tests so that it doesn't come back in a lawsuit and that someone was negligent.
That's exactly right. A doctor never wants to be on the stand.
Really?
I hear that repeatedly from both small and large hospitals, that 30% of the costs in health care in Kansas are medical